We have two stories that we're going to read today. One is based on the Little House books by Laura Ingalls Wilder called Sugar Snow, and one is called Almost Time by Gary Schmidt and Elizabeth Stickney. And they all have little buckets in the books. And there's something about sugar there. And it kind of looks like there's some snow on the ground, but not a lot of snow on the ground. So we'll have to see what they're about. Big woods. Sugar snow. Once upon a time, a little girl named Laura lived in the big woods of Wisconsin in a little house made of logs. Laura lived in the little house with her pa, her ma, her big sister Mary, her baby sister Carrie, and their good old bulldog Jack. There's a cat too. Spring was coming to the big woods. For days the sun shone and the weather was warm. All day the icicles fell one by one from the little house into the snowbanks. Then one day Laura saw a patch of ground showing through the snow. "May I go out to play, Ma?" she asked. "You may tomorrow, Ma promised. That night, Laura woke up shivering. Her nose was icy cold. Ma tucked another quilt under her. "Snuggle close to Mary," Ma said, "and you'll get warm." In the morning, Laura looked out the window, and the ground was covered with soft, thick snow. Pa came in, stamping the soft snow from his boots. "It's sugar snow," he said. Laura quickly tasted a snowflake from Pa's sleeve. There it is. But it didn't taste like sugar at all. "Why is it sugar snow, Pa?" she asked. Pa said he would explain tonight after he came home from Grandpa's. It was late when Pa came home that night. He came in with a big bucket and two little packages. He gave the bucket to Ma and the little packages to Laura and Mary. The bucket was full of dark brown maple syrup. When Laura opened her little package, she found a little hard brown cake with beautifully crinkled edges. Laura bit off one little crinkle, and it was sweet. "It's maple sugar," said Pa. Supper was ready, and Laura and Mary laid their little maple sugar cakes by their plates while they ate the maple syrup on their bread. After supper, Pa took them on his knees as he sat by the fire and told them about his day at Grandpa's and the sugar snow. "All winter," Pa said, "Grandpa has been making wooden buckets for the maple syrup. When the first warm weather came, he took the buckets out into the woods and put each one by a maple tree. Then he drilled a small hole in the tree so that the sap could run out. After all the buckets were full, he boiled all the sap in a big iron kettle until it turned into maple syrup. Then he took some of that sweet syrup and he made it into cakes of hard brown maple sugar." "Is that why it's called sugar snow? Because Grandpa made sugar?" asked Laura. "No," said Pa, "it's called sugar snow because the snow at this time of year helps the trees to make more sap for the syrup." Then it was time for bed. By the time Laura and Mary had washed their sticky fingers and were snug in their beds, Pa and his fiddle were both singing them off to sleep. There he is, playing his fiddle. That's the end. Almost Time by Gary Schmidt and Elizabeth Stickney. Almost time. You think it's almost time for? When Ethan had to eat his pancakes with applesauce instead of maple syrup one Sunday morning, he knew it was almost sugaring time. "Is the sap running yet?" he asked. Dad shook his head. "No, not until the days get warmer." That afternoon, Ethan took his sled to the big hill. It was a sunny day, so he left his hat and his scarf and his mittens at home. But the day wasn't warm. Oh, he looks chilly. Next Sunday morning, Ethan's dad made a pan of cornbread. No syrup. Is it time to tap the trees? Ethan asked. When the nights get shorter, Dad said. At bedtime that night, Ethan thought there might be some daylight still coming through the window, but there wasn't enough to find Roosevelt. What do you think Roosevelt is? You see his little bear right there. I kind of think that's Roosevelt. Next Sunday morning, Ethan stirred raisins and walnuts into his bowl of oatmeal. No syrup. When he bit down on a walnut, he discovered something. My tooth is loose, he said. His father inspected. I expect it will fall out before long. How long? Asked Ethan. About as long as it takes the sap to start running, Dad said. Now Ethan had 2 things to wait for. Waiting on making syrup, and there's his tooth. But the days were still cold, and the nights were still long. But he found Roosevelt. And his tooth would not come out. The next Sunday morning, Ethan's dad made eggs and toast. No mention of syrup there. Ethan tried not to think about maple syrup in the afternoons when he slid down the big hill, or when he turned on his lamp at night, or when he wiggled his very loose tooth during school. Until... What happened? What did he get? His dad was waiting when he got off the bus. How's that tooth? He asked. Ethan smiled to show him. So is the sap going to run now? Asked Ethan. His dad smiled to show him. What do you see there? Do people usually have buckets on trees? Only one time of year do you have buckets on trees, just on the maple trees. Every afternoon that week and all day Saturday, Ethan and Dad hauled buckets of sap from the trees and tended to the fire beneath the pans. As the sap boiled and boiled, there we go, pouring it into bottles. And early on Sunday morning, when there was already a little light in the sky, Ethan poured sweet maple syrup on his pancakes. Do you think that made him happy? Yep. Roosevelt too, I bet. The end. Alrighty. We have a craft we're going to make today. And it's going to be with those bottles that are over there. And I've got a bunch of stuff that we can put into the bottles. We're going to make our own little jars. Like, you know, we're making maple syrup. We're going to make these bottles have little bits and pieces of all sorts of stuff in them. Then we can make them into shakers, exactly. So rather than being something liquid, we'll just put dry stuff in there. We made a funnel out of a piece of construction paper and some tape. And
But
that will just go.
Finished.
It's not finished. No, it's not finished. And we're going to stick them through that way. So I am going to let Dylan show you how he's going to just make his stuff. So you go ahead, Dylan. What are you going to do? What will you put in first? You think you're going to go one at a time? Did you know you could even use those jars or those bowls and just dump from the bowls? You could pick up the whole bowl. You're seeing what's showing up in there. So, he's picking out his stuff. And when he's done picking out his stuff, we'll show you what it looks like. Alright, now Dylan finished this bottle. He's going to grab some scissors and create some stuff from using the next bottle. He needs to make something for his brother. But here is his bottle. If you wanted to, you could put some hot melt glue on the rings there around the cap so that it would stay on, or some super glue so that you wouldn't have it randomly twisted open and then your little stuff all over the room. But do you want to shake it for everybody, Dylan? Do you want to show everybody the noise it makes with the corn and the peas and stuff in there? There it goes. So you made your own. So if you didn't have an instrument earlier when we did our song with instruments, this could be your instrument that you would use. So we've made our jar, our bottle, with stuff in it. And not maple syrup, because that would be awfully sticky to be making a craft with. Thank you so much for coming today. We'll see you again.